You didn't do anything wrong. You know that. And yet something inside you keeps apologizing, keeps replaying, keeps shrinking. As if the guilt knows something you don't. It doesn't, but your brain does. Here's something nobody told you. Guilt was never designed to tell you what you did wrong. It was designed to protect your relationships. Those are not the same thing. Every social species that survived did so because its members could feel bad about things that threatened group cohesion, not just things they did, things that might be perceived as threatening, things that could be interpreted the wrong way, things that might even slightly put them at risk of rejection. The guilt came first, the wrongdoing came second, and in many cases never came at all. Neuroscientist Tania at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences published research in 2004 in Science showing that guilt and empathy activate overlapping neural networks. The same brain regions that register other people's pain register your potential role in causing it. You don't need to have caused anything. You just need to imagine that you might have. And your brain fires the same signal either way. Think about what that means. Every time someone around you is upset, your brain doesn't wait to find out if you caused it. It immediately runs a simulation. Could this be mine? Did I do something? Is there something I should have done differently? The simulation fires before you have a single piece of evidence, before you know anything at all. And by the time you ask yourself, did I do something wrong? Your brain has already decided the answer might be yes. This is why guilt feels so convincing. It doesn't arrive as a question. It arrives as a verdict, a weight, a certainty that something needs to be fixed, even when nothing is broken. But here's where it gets strange. Some people feel guilt far more than others, not because they do more wrong, because their brains are more socially attuned. Psychologist June Price Tangney at George Mason University spent decades studying guilt and shame. Her research, published in Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, found that people with higher empathy levels, people who are better at reading others, better at understanding how their actions land, consistently report higher levels of guilt. The more you care about people, the more guilt you carry. Not because you deserve it, because your brain is working harder than most. And here's what nobody tells you about that. The people most consumed by guilt are often the people who have done the least wrong, because the ones who genuinely don't care about others feel almost nothing. Guilt requires empathy, and empathy is not free. Every hour you spend in guilt is evidence that your brain is doing something most brains won't. It's paying attention, it's caring, it's holding you accountable to a version of yourself that matters to other people. That's not weakness. That's the most demanding cognitive work a human brain can do, and most people never know that. They spend years believing the guilt is proof of something wrong inside them, when it was always proof of something right. There's something even deeper happening here. Your brain runs a continuous social monitoring system. Every interaction, it tracks the emotional state of the people around you. Did that land wrong? Did I take up too much space? Did my words hurt someone I didn't intend to hurt? Psychologist Jessica Tracy at the University of British Columbia has spent years studying how social emotions guilt, shame, pride operate as automatic regulatory systems. Her research shows these signals fire below conscious awareness before deliberate thought has formed, published across multiple studies in psychological science and emotion. By the time you feel guilty, your brain has already filed a report. And the report isn't always accurate, because this system wasn't built for accuracy. It was built for speed, for caution, for erring on the side of assuming you may have done something wrong. Because in a world where relationships determined survival, false positives were safer than false negatives. Better to feel unnecessary guilt than to miss genuine damage to a relationship. Your brain chose caution every time, and it still does. You're not oversensitive, you're not irrational, you're running a system that was calibrated for a world where one misread relationship could end everything, where one wrong gesture could cost you your place in the group, where the price of getting it wrong was too high to risk. That world is gone. The system isn't. And every time someone around you seems different, quieter, colder, more distant, your system fires. Not because you did something wrong, because it cannot afford to assume you didn't. But here's the part that changes everything. There are two completely different kinds of guilt, and your brain treats them as if they are the same. The first is healthy guilt. It fires when you have actually violated your own values, when you said something you didn't mean, when you let someone down in a way that matters. This guilt is useful. It drives repair. It drives change. change. It keeps you honest, aligned with who you want to be. The second is toxic guilt. It fires when you have done nothing wrong, but your brain has detected a social risk anyway. When someone is upset and your presence in the situation is enough to trigger the alarm. When you said no to something. When you chose yourself. When you simply existed in a way that didn't perfectly serve everyone around you. Psychologist Martin Hoffman at New York University documented this distinction across decades of research, culminating in his 2000 book Empathy and Moral Development, published by Cambridge University Press. He called it empathy-based guilt and showed that it fires independently of any actual wrongdoing. The trigger isn't what you did, it's what you fear your actions might have meant to someone else. And once that signal fires, it feels identical to the real thing. Same heaviness, same replay, same shrinking. Your brain doesn't label which kind it's sending, it just sends the feeling. And you spend hours, sometimes years, trying to work out what you did wrong, when the answer is nothing. So how do you tell the difference? Healthy guilt has a clear object. You know what it is. You know what you could do differently. It points toward repair. Toxic guilt is diffuse. It fills the air without landing on anything specific. It just sits there, heavy and persistent, without giving you anything actionable to do about it. If you can answer the question, what exactly did I do wrong and what could I do about it? The guilt is real and worth acting on. If the answer keeps shifting, if the guilt moves from one thing to another without resolution, your brain is running the caution program, not the conscience program, and those require completely different responses. The caution program doesn't need apology. It doesn't need self-punishment. It needs one thing only: evidence that the relationship is intact. Psychologist Roy Baumeister at Case Western Reserve University, along with Arlene Stillwell and Todd Heatherton, published research on guilt in Psychological Bulletin in 1994. Their findings showed that guilt-driven behavior is almost always oriented toward relationship repair, whether or not any repair is actually needed. People feeling toxic guilt apologize excessively. They over-explain, they shrink, they give more than was asked, not because they did something wrong, because their brain is trying to close a loop that was never actually opened. The most effective response isn't apology, it's connection. A conversation, a check-in, a simple confirmation that the relationship is still there. That's what the alarm was looking for all along. Not punishment, not confession, just proof that the connection survived. And once it gets that proof, the signal quiets. Not because you fixed something, because your brain finally received the information it was waiting for. You weren't being irrational. You weren't being too sensitive. You were running the most sophisticated social calibration system ever developed by a living species, one that kept human groups together for 300,000 years, that made sure no one ever drifted too far from the people who kept them alive. The problem isn't the system. The problem is that it doesn't know the difference between a genuine rupture and a shadow it mistook for one. And that shadow felt real. It always does, because your brain built it from the same material as the real thing. The same neural pathways, the same weight in the chest, the same voice asking what you did wrong. The only difference is that this time there was no answer, because there was nothing to find. Most people spend their lives trying to find the thing they did wrong, searching backwards through every conversation, every silence, every moment where someone seemed different. They never find it, because it was never there. And all that searching, that replaying, that shrinking, that constant low-level apology, it wasn't weakness. It was your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting a connection it couldn't afford to lose. And you've been apologizing for shadows your entire life without ever knowing why. Oddly explained.